Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of stories affecting the Sikh community around the world. And as Putin embraces Modi once more during his visit to Delhi, the West rolls its eyes in collective despair. Meanwhile, Sikh campaigners have successfully prevented Hindutva forces erecting a statue of Mahatma Gandhi in Canada. And here in the UK, pressure mounts yet further as more MPs batter our failing Prime Minister with more letters and questions as to why he still has done absolutely nothing about Jagtar Singh Johal. All that and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and it looks like it is not just there in the UK, but also here in Canada, where the Sikh community is trying to hold their feet to the fire when it comes to the politicians, law enforcement, and others to make things happen. But you'll have to stick around and listen to what's going on in the world as we continue the show today. But don't forget also to stick around to the end so that you can catch which comments make the grade and which ones get on the show today. We love your comments. Don't forget to keep them coming. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe so we can get our numbers up. We appreciate all of the work of our viewers who have been sharing the program with others and getting them to subscribe. We're all in it together to get this education out there. So thank you to all viewers who've been doing that, Angus.
Indeed, of course, always a huge thank you to our audience. And in the meantime, James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, we'll take a look at loads of your very interesting comments that have been pouring in. So thank you for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, I thought we'd start on a little bit of a lighter note today. And here in Canada, as I'm sure I know in the US and probably in the UK as well, it used to be a common thing for families to get out at Christmas time and actually go tour, whether it's the small town or the big cities. All of the stores had amazing window displays for the holidays. And that's something that seems to have disappeared over the years. One of the ones in Vancouver that used to be world renowned was the old Woodward store. However, with that said, we've taken a bit of a step back in time when it comes to one of the local film studios, and that is the Martini Studios in Langley, British Columbia, just 20 minutes from where I'm at, actually, and I've been there as an actor, many different shows. And they have decorated the entire backlot studio that's set up as a main town square for different productions. Now, of course, with that, they have done an amazing job to bring together the historic feel of the community during that era with the carolers and the lights and the buildings. And also of note, though, and the reason why I thought this was a story worth talking about, is that they also have the Surrey Food Bank on location collecting donations for the annual food drive for the Christmas season. We know that this year has been a tough year for not only our viewers, but for people all over the world. We know that there has been a recession. We know that people have been trying to... Oh, we've lost our videos there. I don't know what happened. There we go. But in any event, yeah, it has been tough. So this is a twofold event. Number one, it spreads a lot of holiday cheer. It brings everybody together to enjoy themselves in that old era of the town halls being decorated and ready for Christmas, but also to giving to the local food bank. We know that there are many different drives, not only throughout the Surrey Food Bank in Brampton, Toronto, and others around North America and probably in the UK, but also in the Gurdwaras. The different levels of giving within the school programs, all of that, make it tough. And that's going to hit the Gurdwaras as well during this holiday season as they try, as everybody in the community tries to send out the donations and where they can. So it's been a tough year. It's going to be a tough year ahead, I do believe. But again, it's just a great way to take in some real holiday cheer and enjoy yourself. Get out and just explore. And I took my family out this past weekend, so I thought it was great to get some footage and share it with everybody here to just give you an idea as to, especially for people that maybe have grown up in India or other regions, to take a look back and see how we used to celebrate as communities and just enjoy it in the community areas, whether it's downtown, town centers, and so forth, as I said. Now, throughout this event, of course, there's caroling, there's everything. If you're interested in attending, it's called Merry and Bright at Martini Film Studios. And again, it's all an outdoor backlot studio. So it is just amazing to check out. But it also, you don't know what characters like Elsa from Frozen are going to be there. So the kids love it, the parents love it, and it was an exciting event. So I hope that you'll do that and support the local food banks in your community at the same time. As we continue on, ladies and gentlemen, there is some breaking news coming out in relation to a story that we spoke about some time ago, and that had to do with the Morecambe soccer team, or football club, as you're called in the UK. It appears that one of the individuals who was actually involved in the marketing and the new development of the public and press relations has been called out by the government and said that he is involved in certain areas of finance for Barbar Khalsa and the Barbar Akali Lar. Now, this means that those organizations, of course, as we know, are labeled as terror organizations in the UK as well as Canada and other nations. But with that said, of course, this individual was acting as a consultant, and people have taken it a bit too far in the link of him with ownership, management, and investors. And the reason why is because as the public relations person and media relations person, as the club went through that transition, he was speaking to different media and other individuals of prominence in the community using the term "we." And that's not uncommon for people a part of a management team when they start to take ownership in something. And I don't mean physical or financial ownership. I just mean the buy-in to relabeling and rebranding, in this case, the football club. Now, unfortunately, this has tied him to the organization and given them a bad PR spin that's been coming out and just announced, because of the fact that not only has he been associated, but now he's actually being sanctioned by the UK government, which means that his assets and other investments, properties, and portfolio content is actually being frozen. And this is of a big concern because it drew a lot of questions about whether or not the team will continue in the National League. Because, of course, we know with the new ownership of the Punjab Group coming forward and making that purchase, one of the big things was that there was a lot of unpaid debt, salaries, and other issues when it came to the monetary operations of the team. This should be, again, noted that it is not this individual's responsibility as an owner. He's not a manager. He's not more than a consultant. And therefore, the financial longevity of the team looks solid. The investor team is solid. And yeah, I don't think people should read too much into it. However, of course, we know that that link in the sports world is going to make for sensational headlines. So I thought that it was important that we take a look and really just sort out how this is being linked and could give the Morecambe a bad name when really it has to do with one person who was working as a consultant. Once again, it's important for people to differentiate that. When you look at the India government or other governments, when they're looking at these, what they call terror groups or the Khalistan extremists, these represent, and there are a few extremists out there that want Khalistan that maybe still have some ideological base that's left over from the 80s when the tragedies and the massacres took place, as well as the genocide. However, that represents a very, very small percentage of anybody who's acting on behalf of moving forward for a sovereign Khalistan. These are not the mainstream supporters of the movement. These are not the mainstream people who are active in campaigning. So again, it's a very, very small number, not the masses. And it's just like Christianity. It's just like, Islam and the Muslims and everybody else, is that you're going to have a small number of the extremists. They do not represent the masses. They do not represent the majority. So again, very important for people to share this information, get it out there so that others don't hit a panic button and think that there's all of a sudden this big boogeyman out there that really doesn't exist. It is just a very small number of people involved in more extremist or more aggressive towards the Khalistan sovereignty. So again, just thought that was important to bring up as well. As we move on, there have been 16 people arrested, and this report comes in from Chandigarh that there are these groups of Saroops that are missing in the hundreds. And they now have announced that the former Chief Secretary, Roop Singh, and the ex-secretary of the Durham Parchar Committee, Manjit Singh, have also been arrested as a part of the 26. With that going forward, we have the names of the others, but I'm not going to read them all out in the matter of time. But it comes with the, as I said, the matter of hundreds, and in this case, they labeled it as 328 Saroops of the Guru Granth Sahib, and they were under care of the SGPC's publication house in Amritsar. That came to light in 2020, where the investigation started, and what they're labeling as misappropriation. Now, some have been charged with theft, with fraud, and other breaches of trust that were there. The inquiry was also conducted by the Kali Takht appointed panel into the matter, and as I said, several individuals through their investigation and their inquiry have held some of the SGPC officials guilty of misconduct. Meanwhile, the Assembly Speaker in Punjab, Jagtar Singh Johal, said that the state government will not tolerate any acts of sacrilege, and he was quoted as saying, "Our government, will not spare anybody who commits this type of heinous crime. Guru Sahib Ji has guided us to protect all religions across the globe." So again, very big statement, and I think that it's important for people to remember how inclusive the Sikhs are, whether or not you worship any religion or no religion. They are there to make you the best that you can be. And if that's the best at other religions, then so be it. And that, again, is why this is such a sacrilege to desecrate or to remove these different Saroops without authorization. So it's good to see that they have found the people accountable. Hopefully they are not just scapegoats, because we know that this does happen as well within the Indian criminal justice system. So hopefully they are actually the perpetrators and not just the scapegoats. Back to Canada, the ongoing problem with the extortion and violence that's targeting our Sikh community and other South Asian populations, of course, is ongoing. The Brampton area in Ontario is no exception. They are holding different events, and the first one, of course, happened yesterday, and that was to confront law enforcement, politicians, and others to hold their feet to the fire, as I said earlier, and to really have action taken that's going to be tangible, that's going to be long-term, and it's going to have teeth. And that is the big concern, is that a lot of the Sikh community are feeling left out in the cold. And no pun intended with it being wintertime, but they feel that they are being abandoned by those who are supposed to be protecting the community. And of course, we can look at not only the increased number, even as law enforcement is putting more resources into this, again, the numbers are increasing within the Brampton region. Not only are the different organizations, the Gurdwara Society of Ontario, and I probably got their name wrong, but that's essentially who's looking at this, as well as the Sikh Federation and the World Sikh Organization, are all coming together for these series. It's not only taking place in Brampton, that was the one that took place yesterday, however, upcoming on December the 13th at the, I believe it's the Venice Banquet Hall in Calgary from 12 till 3 p.m. They will be holding another town hall meeting, and then one, of course, here in Surrey at the Civic Hotel, which is located next to City Hall. And that will take place on December the 14th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And I will be in attendance. I've already confirmed my attendance at that event, so we'll bring footage from that, from the Surrey event as well, Angus. And yeah, it just seems that everybody's feeling still, quite concerned about their safety, about their family safety, and much more when it comes to the problem of the transnational repression that's hitting Canada. And of course, that goes without saying that people are still upset with Mark Carney and other government officials who have been meeting and advancing trade talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi instead of holding him accountable for his government's involvement in the transnational repression that's taking place here in Canada, Angus.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you using the words the Sikh community feeling a little bit left out in the cold, apart from obviously the obvious seasonal pun there. Well done on that one. I think it's very indicative of this game of global geopolitics that's going on, that's being played out at the moment. And I think, the clue really there is Mark Carney. And again, regular viewers of the show know certainly my feelings about Mark Carney. And sadly, I think the Sikh community are a bit of collateral damage in what's going on a global basis, because we actually, ironically, we have very much the same sort of issue here in the UK with Keir Starmer, and in France, Macron. These three, well, certainly Macron and Starmer, and certainly in Germany, I think it's Merz. These guys are effectively World Economic Forum place people. They are known to be affiliated with the World Economic Forum, and as a result of that, they are following this sort of globalist agenda. Now, this globalist agenda is there's no conspiracy. It's pretty clear what's going on to anybody who follows current affairs. And unfortunately, it is the minority communities like the Sikh community that are collateral damage in this, because of course India forms a pretty crucial part of the WEF agenda. And clearly they want trade deals. They want to bring India into the fold. They obviously see it as a huge market to boost global trade, etc., etc. So, of course, as I say, the collateral damage of that is human rights globally, because, of course, these issues of human rights that we talk about on a daily basis are conveniently brushed under the carpet. Who cares about the Sikh community? They're only a small minority. We care more about making our billions or trillions through global trade, etc. So, unfortunately, that is just, it's a sad indictment of where we are. And I predict here and now that I think Q1, Q2, the first 2 quarters of next year, will be very, very interesting times in global politics. I think there is a huge upswelling of public dynamics, let's call it, that is certainly swirling beneath the surface. The people of Europe, I know certainly here in Europe, are deeply, deeply unhappy with many things. There are many big issues which are really swirling beneath the surface, and they're only just bubbling up here and there, little symptoms of a deep unhappiness amongst the populations. And as a result of that, we do know that Keir Starmer here in the UK is the most unpopular Prime Minister in history, and not just Prime Minister, the government itself, the whole group of them are the most unpopular government that we probably have had in British history. So again, there's even talk of civil war here in the UK across social media, and that isn't just light banter going on. There's actually genuine feelings that there is something serious going on beneath the surface. That we're noticing the same in France, we're noticing the same in Germany. There is this almost authoritarian clamping down going on, and I think there's an element of this going on across in North America as well. So I believe, and there's certainly catalytic events that are, I think, on the foreseeable horizon in the first half of next year. And I think there's going to be some very serious, significant changes in global world affairs and global structure, let's call it, the structure of global governance in the first half of next year. So you heard it here first. We will see. But anyway, I'll talk about Modi and Putin, because this is all linked, of course, to how on earth we treat Narendra Modi in India here in the West with the democratic nations, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to jump back to, and just completely change the subject, back to the Morecambe story, the Morecambe Football Club. This is a really strange one, actually, and I'm deeply suspicious about what's going on here. Because we often talk about how Hindutva, the Hindutva forces are deeply infiltrating Western institutions, whether it's the media, whether it's industry, whether it's academia, whatever. We do know Hindutva is hugely resourced and is hugely powerful in terms of spinning the narrative. Now, this story of Morecambe FC, on the face of it, it seems pretty clear cut. That this was a football club that was failing, that was saved by a bunch of philanthropic Sikhs who had deeply cared about Morecambe football club. It's a small town, Morecambe. It's a lovely town up in the northwest of England, and the local fans really deeply passionate about their club. Welcome the Sikhs, well done to the Sikhs who philanthropically came in and saved the club. And yet suddenly we get this strange story of some sort of consultant on the peripheries who's got some alleged links to Baba Khalsa, these proscribed terrorist organisations. Well, again, it stinks. This whole story stinks of Hindutva spin. Because apart from the fact, Baba Khalsa, technically it exists. It is not an active, as far as I'm aware, it is not an active terrorist cell. I certainly see nothing across any media anywhere about any actual operations or activities of Baba Khalsa. It might technically sit on the British statute books as a prescribed terrorist organisation, but in terms of its effectiveness, its existence, it's as you said, James, it's on the peripheries. I think it's not even just on the peripheries. I think it's almost non-existent. So I find this whole story deeply, deeply suspicious. And again, it's what we call a storm in a teacup. They're trying to create this big narrative. Oh, linked with terrorism. Is it really? And again, I just find it. I just find that there's too many elements of this story which raise my research radar. Thinking I need to dig into this one just to see. I think there's a bit more of a backstory going on here. Apart from the fact, even if this guy is associated or affiliated with Baba Khalsa, he's clearly only on the peripherals of the football club. But the football club is almost irrelevant to this. It's the fact that the mainstream news, I think it was the BBC, reported this, and one wonders again. I'm always suspicious of the British establishment, because the British establishment is clearly, for whatever reasons that we still can't fathom, is clearly anti-Sikh. It does its level best to try and tarnish, particularly the Khalistan movement, with a negative portrayal. And again, this presumably is under pressure from India. We do know there is huge amounts of pressure from India against the British establishment to contain and bury and really press down upon the Khalistan movement. Never let it get the air of attention. Never let it get publicity, and actually to intimidate, harass the Sikh community and particularly the Khalistan community. And so again, this sits in the context of that. So again, I'm very suspicious when the establishment reports something like this, where the establishment says, "Oh, it is a prescribed terrorist organisation," etc., etc. So you can see again. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a bit more research on that one, James. But I'd say it really really raises my suspicions. And finally, just on the Christmas story, just a point on this is that again, it's a strange one, but here in the UK, and I think we're certainly seeing it across Europe, is that the celebration of Christmas, obviously, it's a Christian festival by definition. And for some reason, the liberal left are really keen to say it's the holidays, it's not Christmas. They're removing the whole Christian element of it, and this is under pressure from the Islamic community. But weirdly, actually, many of the Islamic community are not that intimidated, let's call it, by the celebration of Christmas. And particularly, but also the Sikh community are not offended by Christmas. And forgive me for speaking on behalf of the Sikh community, but I do know we've had comments from many people last Christmas, same story. There's many people in the Sikh community says, we celebrate Christmas. My kids celebrate Christmas. We are a Sikh family. We are Sikhs, as we call them in the UK. We follow Christmas. We even have a Christmas tree because we like to celebrate this other religion's celebration. Likewise, we Christians like to celebrate other religions' celebrations, etc., etc. So again, there's this weird sort of self-destructive element here in Europe where, again, it's usually the liberal left feel they're so delicate and so scared of offending, particularly the Islamic population, that we're even trying to de-Christmas one of our own Christian festivals. Baffles me, James. But anyway, it's lovely to see this. But of course, it is also linked with charitable giving, which again runs parallel with the Langar and the Saver of the Sikh community, who obviously are always there helping from a charitable platform, the homeless, the needy, etc. And it's lovely to see in that amazing studio lot, that amazing sort of thing to see. And again, it's lovely to see this. And I've no doubt that Sikhs in Canada, in the region, will be celebrating just as much, James.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's becoming, it started about 3 years ago, I believe it was, and it's really becoming a favorite in the community for people to get out and just celebrate together. And you'll see people from all different nationalities. And I think that's a big part of it too, Angus, is that it's become not only a religious holiday, but just a cultural event that everybody, just wants to share the joy with each other, to bring happiness. And that time of year where in this day and age. I mean, anything that can bring communities together, anything that can bring joy to the masses, I think is really a welcome thing, no matter what religious background you're from, no matter what country you're from, or, it doesn't matter. I think that that's the bigger picture is unity.
It is, and as I often say, I just love recounting that one of the fundamental principles of Sikhi is not to be offended or to try and recruit other people to the Sikh religion. It is to celebrate other religions. It is to help, example, Christians be better Christians, Muslims to be better Muslims, etc., etc. And that is why Sikhs are quite happy to celebrate another religion's festivities. Why wouldn't you? Because again, it's just part of that wonderful Sikhi principle. So. Anyway, let's move on, James, and I'm going to talk about the Modi-Putin meeting. Now, Narendra Modi, as we do know, well, India as a nation state has had long, deep historic ties with Russia, which of course has irked the West to a large degree ever since 1947, when it became an independent nation. And this relationship with Russia has certainly not gone away. It certainly hasn't changed in the sense that it has remained as deep as ever. And one would argue it's actually potentially got even deeper, particularly with the rise of the BJP since 2014. And the BJP, the RSS, we do know has deep links with Moscow, with deep links with the FSB, because we do know through various sort of it's stronger than rumours, but we do know that there are reports that RAW, for example, the Indian intelligence wing, works very closely with the FSB, particularly on an overseas basis to track and harass and intimidate Khalistan campaigners. And it's not impossible that the FSB actually had a hand in providing intelligence, for example, in the murders of Hardeep Singh Johal and others, etc. So again, these ties run deep. And of course, it is irking the West to a large degree because the West is desperate, as I said earlier, to bring India into alignment with Western democratic values, because apart from the fact that there's a threat from China that the West is deeply concerned about, there is also the whole commercial aspect to this, the whole benefits of global commercial trade with its 1.4 billion population potential market. So anyway, so of course reported in the news over the last few days, and all the news outlets basically have pretty much the same sort of story, just with slightly different angles on it. I'll use this one. This is just a UK paper that talked about it, but just to present some of the facts. And Modi, again, this is a bit of a clickbait title, this one. Modi says India not neutral in Russia. In fact, what he actually said is the not neutral is that we take the position of peace between Russia and Ukraine. So again, it's a bit of a clickbait title. Anyway, but as this paper reports, Modi declined to criticise Putin's war in Ukraine as he welcomed the Russian president to New Delhi on Friday, so saying only that his position is for peace. So again, that's a bit of a non-story that in itself. But India has, of course, unsurprisingly, been under a huge scrutiny from Europe and North America for its purchase of Russian oil since the war in Ukraine. Now, we do know that India has been, against international sanctions, has been purchasing large amounts, billions of dollars worth of Russian oil. And by doing this, they have been feeding the Russian war machine against Ukraine. And of course, the United Nations, with a few exceptions, has of course boycotted and sanctioned Russia, have tried to prevent any nations buying Russian oil because it is that purchase, it is that commercial trade that is financing the Russian war machine. Now, India has continued to buy discounted Russian oil. And what's even worse about this, and again, the Indian people seem to be oblivious of this, it's Russian billionaires that have been buying Russian oil at a discount and then reselling it into the global markets at a vast profit. Now, the Indian people aren't benefiting from that. It is the Indian oligarchs. It is the Indian billionaires who are benefiting from this. And likewise, the West obviously know this is going on. And likewise, this is, again, not just funding the Russian war machine, but it is also funding the Indian billionaires. So again, it raises whole questions about the morality of the Indian state. Now, and of course, the warnings have come from Washington and also from the European Union that it is keeping Moscow's revenues afloat. And even Trump has imposed his tariffs, an additional 25% on Indian imports, taking the total to 50%. So huge tariffs, again, just to try and punish India. And what is India doing? It is actually embracing Vladimir Putin. So it's clearly not working. As I said, these ties run deep. India is not a signatory of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Now, that criminal court has indicted Vladimir Putin as a war criminal. So there is an obligation for any nations that if Vladimir Putin sets foot in your nation and you are a signatory nation of this statute, you are obliged to arrest Putin. Now, India, surprisingly, I say that slightly tongue-in-cheek, is not a signatory to this statute, and therefore Putin can safely set foot in India knowing that he will not be arrested by his mate Narendra Modi. So, and then this article continues that Mr. Putin was received by the Indian Prime Minister. And here again, we talk about the ties running deep. He was given a bear hug and a tight handshake with the gusto of an old friend. So again, this really must raise the hackles of Western leaders. Well, I say that, does it really? But anyway, clearly, again, this friendship between Modi and Putin runs deep. And the agenda, and again, we talk about this historic relationship. It's not just historic, it's a very present relationship. It's a very present day relationship because the agenda included defence talks. In other words, a collaboration militarily. So again, when the West naively thinks, oh, we can bring India alongside, we'll bring it into our democratic family, and India itself declares it's a democracy, and yet they are talking about a defence relationship, a military relationship with Russia. This nation that we in the West are trying to paint as this dangerous bogeyman who is literally about to set foot on European soil with an invasion of his tanks and his army, which I think is absolute nonsense in itself. But anyway, the West is painting Vladimir Putin as this huge bogeyman, and yet here we have India, who we're trying to claim as a friend, as an ally, a reliable ally. No, they're talking about defence, energy and labour mobility collaborations. And again, parts of those discussions, they talked about the continuing delivery of 2 further Russian S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. And again, this is under a $5 billion deal that was agreed in 2018 to supply arms. Russia supplying arms to India. And likewise, they signed a pact in February to improve military cooperation, exercises, port calls, disaster relief assistance and logistics supports, and of course, upgrading India's Russian-made Su-30 Mk-1 fighter jets, accelerating deliveries of critical military hardware, etc., etc. In other words, this complete naive position of the West with India, it unfortunately is belied by this issue that most of the Indian military was actually supplied and constructed by Russia. India isn't going to wash its hands of this overnight, sadly. So again, one has to question why on earth the West are trying so hard to align with with India. We do know, of course, the ultimate goal is we need India on side with the whole China issue, but ultimately we cannot see India as a reliable ally. These ties run too deep. These connections between Russia and India are too deep. Putin, of course, is working overtime to keep India alongside. India is a reliable ally for Russia, but India is not a reliable ally for the West. India is trying to play the game from both sides. And unfortunately, you cannot keep doing that indefinitely. Unsurprisingly, this article, like many did, referred to this diplomatic crisis that yet another meeting between these two leaders has sparked. The visit from Putin could strain relations with the EU and the US. I think that's an understatement, and might jeopardise negotiations for major trade agreements with both that are seen as critical for India's exports. No, well, it doesn't. This is the point. This is why I say almost an exasperation, is that we keep wanting and we keep tying up these trade deals with India because we're so damn greedy in the West that we not just brush human rights under the carpet, we're brushing the very simple, obvious fact that India is clearly not an ally of the West, nor has it ever been, and arguably, nor will it ever be. This again is why we need Khalistan, because we cannot rely on the nation of India. India is irrevocably tied to Russia. When will we wake up to that fact? And it says, experts have said the grand hosting of Putin in Delhi conveys a message that India is standing by its long-standing strategic partner and defence ally. What more can I say, James? That it's there in black and white. When will the Western leaders realise this?
And when will all world leaders look at this and say, okay, now, of course, we know that India has been supplied with military equipment for generations when it comes to the supply out of Russia. However, I think that what's really important in this day and age with the technological advances is that Russia, in supplying these jets, just as the US supplying to certain nations, they are holding back a certain percentage of that technology or ability on those aircraft. So of course they can't become a threat to themselves. They, don't want to sell equipment that's going to be later at some point if there was a turning of the political tides. They don't want to have that weaponized against them, and therefore they have that control. Or even looking at it from a further standpoint, is do they have the ability to shut down this military equipment, the fighter jets, the submarines, and all of these different parts of technology? Is there a back door into the tech that allows these foreign nations to not only monitor and gain intelligence, but also just to shut down the entire fleet and entire operations that that aren't being detected? That is a risk. It may not be happening yet, but I guarantee you that it is a risk that all nations need to really wake up to and be more cognizant of in negotiating these new technologies, and how much of it is controlled by their own nation in the development, in the manufacturing, and in all of the technology spaces as well. I do think that that poses a big risk coming out of Russia, whether they are supplying, North Korea, whether they're supplying India or anybody else. That is a big concern because, again, with India taking such a pro-Western stance when it comes to intelligence sharing, they're trying to really get in with the Five Eyes and other nations. And I'm not saying Five Eyes specifically. I'm just saying with those nations to share intelligence. What is that going to translate into when there is intelligence being shared, for example, with Modi, and for that to transition over to Russia, and what threats are going to be held over Modi's head to make him spill that intelligence with the FSB or whatever their intelligence organizations are that are active in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, again, just when we talk about intelligence sharing, it's ironic that the British intelligence have shared intelligence with Indian intelligence over people like Jagtar Singh Johal, which is the reason why he got arrested. But yes, let's not forget that the West, particularly the US, for example, has has agreed huge military deals with India, again, to try and bring India alongside. They had a huge package of drones, a multi-billion-dollar military drone package recently sold to India. But yes, as you say, Jez, one wonders if there are kill switches that have been built into this technology that should India turn against the West, then ultimately, there's a backdoor switch that they can kill this sort of technology. We shall see. But anyway, ultimately, India is trying to, as this article talks about, it's walking a strategic tightrope between the West and the rest. And unfortunately, there will come a time when it is going to have to make that decision which side it actually it feels. But let's not forget also in India, Indian politics, the BJP are clearly, and the RSS, read the RSS behind the BJP. The RSS is aligned with Moscow. But sadly, the Congress Party, which also is the party of the Gandhi dynasty, is clearly aligned with Moscow because of the historic ties, for example, with Indira Gandhi, who we know as a teenager visited Moscow on a regular basis. So both key parties, both largest parties in India, are deeply aligned with Moscow. So again, nothing's going to change. Which again is why we always argue the only solution to this is Khalistan. So anyway, let's move on as clock counts down. A quick story here in Huntsville, over in your neck of the woods. This is quite an interesting story that just popped up. It's just a small story, but we'll talk about grassroots activism. In just a few days ago, it was announced that Huntsville, this sort of small town, has rejected the donation of a Mahatma Gandhi monument. Now, there's a lot went on behind this story, but basically, the story's as it stood, there will be no statue of Gandhi in Huntsville after its local council reversed the decision amid a wave of public backlash. Now, a few days ago, there's a town council meeting. They suddenly announced, after many years of this thing had been planned, that they were going to reverse their decision. Because there'd been a bit of an outcry locally. Now, what was that outcry? Now, we do know, of course, that India, and particularly Hindutva forces, are really pushing this whole Mahatma Gandhi sort of story. And regular viewers of certainly my podcast with people like Bhajan Singh Binder and Dr. Singh Grewal, when we've talked about Mahatma Gandhi is not this nice, warm, peace-loving, character that is portrayed by the media. He had a very powerful PR machine that created this completely false image of who the man Gandhi actually was. There's a lot of there's a really dark story about Mahatma Gandhi, apart from his sexual proclivities, which have been referred to regularly, which I would say in and of themselves quite concerning. The fact he was also a racist, and this is the key to this element, is that when he was a young man working with the British state, he was posted to South Africa, and he was well known as a racist, an anti-black racist, and the language he used was really offensive. Even at that time, it was really offensive against the locals. So, as a result, a local group of activists, and I'm delighted to say that one of my regular former podcast guests, Bhajan Singh Binder, was amongst this group, is that they established the Gandhi Statue Ottawa project. And they came up with this plan. Okay, they knew that the local council had been approached by the Mahatma Gandhi organisation, whatever they call themselves, to put up the statue. So they said, we need to stop this. We have to stop this. So they got together. They created this project, this plan to stop it. And what they said, okay, the steps that we need to do is we need to find all the various black community groups in Ottawa, make them aware of what is going on, make them aware of, firstly, the fact that there's a proposed statue of Gandhi, and obviously what Gandhi stood for. And once they agree with our view, is that as a group, as a combined activist campaign group, we will then approach all the city councillors and make them aware of who Mahatma Gandhi actually was and how offensive this is to all our communities here in the region. So, the bit of the backstory, the motion was actually passed back in 2008. So again, this is how long ago it was passed, and it was due to be unveiled in the summer of 2009. But it's taken that long to actually commission the statue, get it built, and then get to this point. So again, it's quite a historic story. So what they did, and this is the actual original motion that was passed by the city council. Mahatma Gandhi societies have erected such statues in major cities around the world, and therefore we passed the motion that we would like one in Huntsville. So these are all, this is the document. I managed to get my hands on the document, this project document of the campaign group. And they said, right, these are all the councillors in Ottawa that we need to approach to make them aware of what's actually going on here. And so there's a long list of councillors with all their contact details. Likewise, here's the long list of community associations and organisations that represent the black community in Ottawa. So these are all the organisations that we need to approach, make them aware, and get them alongside onto the campaign. So again, this long list of groups that they approach, whether it's Nigeria, there's Ghana, there's every African group just about there represented. So they, as a combined group, then lobbied the councillors. This is the current members of Mahatma Gandhi Society of Ottawa. So these are the people who were pushing this statue. And I'm delighted to say, as that previous report said, is the campaign. And again, I always talk about how effective grassroots campaigns can be. They prevented this statue from being placed up, primarily because they made the town council, the city council, aware that Mahatma Gandhi is not the figure that this group, the society claim he is. He is actually a racist and a guy who really is not the sort of person that you would like to publicly display, because he is deeply offensive to many of our minority communities in the city, James.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the big things that technology, as we were talking about technology advances and the negativities of it, I think that this is a story about the positive impacts of technology and how you can reach out to the mass number of people. And not only through politics, but as all of these different community organizations can come together and be aware and educate the broader community on the historical negativities that surrounded Gandhi, that people just have been, they've been gaslit over the years, over the generations even, as to who Gandhi truly was. And technology has given them this opportunity to come together and educate the public to say, no, hold on. What you're not seeing is, as you said, Angus, he had an amazing PR team that really made him out to be this hero and this, godlike character almost. It is definitely good to see the community coming together and standing in solidarity to say, no, not here, not now.
Absolutely. So well done to that campaign group for a very successful campaign, and again a very sharp lesson to all of us who campaign, that these things really can have an impact. Finally, just a quick update on Jaggy. The Sikh Federation reported in the last day or two that they've really been pushing this campaign to try and get, again, talking about grassroots, to get grassroots people in the community and even outside the community to write to their MPs here in the UK to pressure their MPs to do something about Jagtar Singh Johal. And yet again, I'm delighted to report that in the House of Parliament just a couple of days ago, this happened.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The first duty of any government is to ensure the safety and security of all its citizens. And the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention concluded that the detention of Jagtar Singh Johal violates international law. I asked the leader to press the Foreign Secretary to urgently update the House on what efforts have been made by the government on the release of the British citizen Jagtar Johal.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for raising this question. I note that the 4th of November was in fact the 8th anniversary of Mr Johal's arrest. We do continue to raise concerns about his prolonged detention at every opportunity that we can, and we do emphasise the need for a prompt, full and just resolution to his case. But I will draw my honourable friend's comments to the attention of the Foreign Office and make sure that members remain updated on any development.
I mean, again, there's just another barefaced lie, actually, from Sir Alan Campbell there, because this government is now, the word lie has been associated with this government in just about every issue. That is a barefaced lie, because clearly the British government have not raised the issue of Jagtar Singh Johal at every opportunity, because even recently, literally just a few days ago, Yvette Cooper, when she met Jai Shankar, didn't raise the issue of Jagtar Singh Johal. So he has just lied once again in the House of Parliament. Again, a completely pointless response yet again from the government. Well done to Jas Atwell. And the beauty of this now is that on a regular basis now, MPs are standing up asking the same question. What are you doing about Jagtar Singh Johal, a British citizen with India? Why are you not raising this with India, a nation that we have agreed a trade deal with, and yet you're lying in Parliament saying that you're raising his issue at every opportunity. You're not raising this issue at every opportunity. We know that for a fact. You are lying. You are not doing anything about it. This answer is yet again, it's the same answer that every single time an MP stands up and asks the government this question, what are you doing about it? We're raising it at every opportunity. Well, here we are. 8 years later, nothing has been done. He still remains in detention. James, this is the British establishment doing absolutely nothing. This is the Starmer government yet again doing absolutely zero. Zip, zilch, nada. You pick your word. Nothing, James.
Absolutely, Angus, and let's jump back to the story about Gandhi. Instead, let's just develop a bunch of statues of the current politicians in the UK and in Canada. We'll just put those statues in there because they can do more good and less harm if we just have statues in their places.
As I often say, I think my dog could do a better job of running this country than the current government. But anyway, let's move on. Right. As the clock marches on, we could rant for another half an hour on the failure of our politicians and our leaders. Right, we've had some really interesting comments come in over some of last week's videos, and there's a lot of the videos a lot of comments I'm going to cover today. They have a very questioning, I won't say critical, a very questioning stance. And I want to focus on these, and thank you to those who did put these comments in. A lot of this is particularly when we talked particularly about Amritpal Singh, Khalistan, etc. last week. Viru says very few Sikhs in the diaspora would return to Khalistan if it actually if it was established. Let's get realistic. Killer 3, who's actually a regular critic on the channel. Unfortunately, many young Sikhs I speak to just don't want to go back. I don't understand, as they are second, even third generation. Sorry, you do understand. Most people don't want to uproot and leave what they're used to. So again, a lot of comments about this. Well, look, if Khalistan and when Khalistan is established, how many people are actually going to return to it? Why would they give up their comforts and their good life in the West to go back to the Punjab? And Bach Tantra, now, thank you, Bach Tantra, because there was this was a long thread and a lot of, I would say, very well-reasoned discussions among several people on this one. So thank you for all of you on this thread, but particularly Bach Tantra. who raised some very interesting points, very pertinent points. You talk about Pakistan. Look, you say you're a Sikh, and I think you say in a later comment you're a British Sikh. Sikh. All my relatives winter in the United States and Canada. They wouldn't move to Khalistan. So again, you're saying the same point. It's better to be part of India and to be common ground. The Punjab is home to the Vedas, so there's no way the Hindus are going to give that up. You say your uncles and fathers served in the military. They love the fact that they had more rights and opportunities in the West. So you're saying, again, the West is more attractive to Sikhs than the Punjab as it stands. Let's not spoil that for some dream that people don't want to integrate to the West, but they'd rather live these parallel lives, as you call it. So again, the point is that why on earth would people give up the comfortable trappings and the wealthy lives in the West to go back to Punjab? Now, John Wick came back on several points that Bach Tantra had made, but this point was particularly relevant. Look, just because you, as you said, just because you say you won't doesn't mean that others won't. What you don't understand is that economics change over time. Khalistan will become more stable and a growing player for the future because, again, they won't be tied, they won't be restricted by Indian control, state control. And as John Wick says, there's a bright future ahead for Khalistan, etc., etc. Now, I think the point being made here is, look, and to sum up the whole point is, why would Sikhs here in the West leave the comfortable West and move to Punjab, which at the moment is a state, a region that is in sharp decline? That's a good question. Well, the point being raised, particularly by John Wick here, is you can't judge Khalistan by what it is today. The reason that Punjab is in the state it is today is for this very reason that we're campaigning for Khalistan, is that it is deliberately being run down by the Indian state. The Indian state has a very clear agenda to destroy the Punjab, to undermine the Sikh community, to Hinduize the Punjab. That is why people, certainly in the West, Sikh community don't want to go back to Punjab. That is why they're in the West in the first place, is they have fled what the Punjab has become. Whereas Khalistan means that whole area will be governed by the Sikh community, by the people of Khalistan. Therefore, they can build it. Let's take Israel as an example. Israel, when it was first established, was not exactly the most attractive place to be. But you look at Israel today, that is what Khalistan will be. Once it's in charge of its own commerce, its own governance, its own policies, etc. It is resource rich. It will one day become a massively wealthy nation, and that in itself is what will attract people, Sikhs particularly, back to the state of Khalistan, James.
Absolutely. I mean, you can look at Saudi Arabia, you can look at the United Arab Emirates, and that when you look at the foreign population that comes in because of the opportunities that exist. And I don't think that's going to be any different in Khalistan. I also think that people also are overlooking the benefit that may be drawn upon when it comes to dual citizenship, recognized as being a citizen of Khalistan, as well as maybe the UK or the US or Canada. And with that, of course, comes a lot of investment opportunity in a new economy. And I think that's also an important point in this message, is that it is going to be a new economy. It is going to be new opportunity. And I think that a lot of people are going to be investing, even if they don't move back full time, they may go back part time, but even more so, they'll have that opportunity to invest and be a part of the success that will be Khalistan.
Yeah, and I think the message to Bach Tantra is, I totally get where you're coming from, but there's a clue where I think you've been a little bit conditioned by Indian propaganda, because, as you say, they had more your relatives had more rights and opportunities in the West. Why do you think that is? They don't have the same rights and opportunities in the Punjab now because it is being governed by India. It is not governing itself. That's the key point that I think you need to understand. That's why Khalistan, the Khalistan campaign exists. And then again, this a very, very lengthy comment, so sadly we can't go through it as detailed as I would like to. But the conversation continued. And he talked about, let's have a look. This is again very good, very genuine questions, and I'm delighted to address these. Even on this channel, show us the map of Khalistan. We have shown it. If you go back over shows, we have shown various projections and predictions of what Khalistan should be and will be. So please do look at that. We have addressed that point. What will the currency look like? How will they trade, etc. Well, again, we have talked about this to some degree, but there are whole parts of the Khalistan campaign, the Khalistan movement, that are addressing these very things. A lot of it is beneath the surface. A lot of it is not deliberately not in the public domain. But these are things that are being addressed. Just because you don't know what they are and they're not in the public domain, don't think that they are not being addressed. The Khalistan campaign is there to hit the ground running. So again, don't dismiss it because you don't know what it is. Pointing out the divisions that will occur under a Sikh rule. No, we don't think the whole point about there won't be divisions under a Sikh rule. The whole point of Khalistan is that it will follow Sikhi principles, which of course, if you claim to be a Sikh, you will understand. And so the whole point of Khalistan is it will be run under this Panjpyari concept that the Sikh Empire was run under, which actually proved at the time not just to be deeply successful. It was centuries, literally centuries ahead of its time when it was working. So. You talk about, you say that Pakistan was cocksure that it would be a success. Well, again, I'd point to the point Israel as a good example of this, is that likewise the growth of Israel reflects hopefully what will be the growth of Khalistan once it gets control over its own decision making. Now, you claim you've been brought up as a Sikh. It's pure fantasy. It's not. The point is it's not fantasy. You don't know of any Sikh. Again, it's the same discussion. Would anybody leave the West to go to the Punjab? I don't know. We'll put that to the audience. Are there those in the audience who would move back? But what I would say is that as Khalistan is established and it becomes a success like Israel, there are Jews all around the world who are queuing up to move to Israel. They certainly weren't queuing up in 49 or whatever it was when it was established. They weren't queuing up then, but they're certainly queuing up now because they see what a deeply successful nation Israel has become. And the same will be for Khalistan, is that Sikhs all around the world who do have comfortable lives, even second, third generation Sikhs around the world, I confidently feel that once they see how Khalistan is succeeding as a nation, that they will want to move back. And then I think that the final part that you talk about, why don't you all sort of sell up? Why aren't the speakers in Gurdwara saying this is a rule? Come back to Khalistan. This show needs to ask each guest. So when are you going back? They will say soon. But then you say that they'll always come up with excuses. Well, again, I'll refer to what I was just been talking about. The reality is that India is on its way to become a superpower. Do you really think they're going to give up their land? No chance, as you say. Well, actually, no, they're not voluntarily. They're certainly not going to give it up. But the whole point of the Khalistan campaign is to fight it legally and democratically, is to whether India likes it or not, is that the people of Punjab, believe this or not, is it does appear that the majority of people of Punjab are pro-Khalistan. And then John Wick, before I hand over to you, James, John Wick comes back and says, look, first of all, it's clearly you're not a Sikh. I don't know, who knows, but certainly I have to say my interpretation of the comments that you've made. And I would actually say, even if you are a Sikh, I think you have been too persuaded by the Indian narrative to feel that the way you do. And I think you need to watch our show a bit more regularly to understand. And we don't see India as a bogeyman. We see the Indian BJP RSS ruling elite of India as the bogeyman, as you refer to, use that word. But I think you've been a bit too conditioned by Indian propaganda. And that's why, again, you should need to watch our show a little bit more regularly. Everything you listed is the reason why Sikhs are leaving. Again, John Wick replies perfectly on this, saying that the reason the Punjab is in the state it is, and that's why Sikhs are leaving the Punjab for the West, is because of India. This is the very foundational reason why we're campaigning for Khalistan, is because it is being wound down by the Indian state, etc., etc. So anyway, my final sign-off on these comments is thank you to all of you who contributed to that very long, interesting thread, particularly to you, Batch Tantra. Thank you for your very relevant and very genuine questions. I think they are the right questions to ask, but I hope we've answered them. And then certainly John Wick came back, I think, very, very robustly answering, I think, all your points there. But yeah, the question is how many Sikhs would return to Khalistan? I think it will be a trickle to start with, but as Khalistan rises in success, I think that trickle will become a vast stream, James.
Absolutely. And he talks about opportunities and success and building a life. And absolutely, there are going to be a lot of people that don't want to pack up and leave after they've built a new life, business, investments, families, communities. All of this is an important part, an integral part of the human being, is that we want to belong. We want to have that place where we're accepted. But I think that what's being overlooked here is the opportunity for those who are in the Punjab now, as it becomes a Khalistan sovereign state. The opportunities are going to be exponential also for foreign investment. But also, if you look at people who are in Canada, and I'm going to use this as an example because I know firsthand, people who have packed up and gone back to Punjab or back to India, back to China, because Canada is expensive. It is not necessarily the dream that many people visualize it as. And therefore, they do pack up and they go back. So imagine the opportunities for people who are educated outside of India to be able to move back when they're ready to start their career and their life, to be able to say, oh, I'm going home to Khalistan. That is a big draw, I think, and that's what's being overlooked here. And when there's a part of the comment talking about the drug epidemic and pandemic that's happening in Punjab, it's happening everywhere. Different parts of the world have different types of substances that are being abused, that are creating cesspools within the inner city areas. We see it in the downtown east side in Vancouver. It's just a whole other dystopic, just a cesspool of an area down there that not enough is being done to correct the problem, to find solutions, and ones that actually work. So again, you can look at the use of the drugs by the Indian government in trying to suppress the Punjab community.
Indeed. And okay, final set as we're running out of time now. And Mahender, thank you, Mahender. This is interesting. Mahender has appeared on our Critics' Corner on more than one occasion, but it comes back with a cracking comment, which I totally agree with. Here's wisdom. Don't trust news mediums. Get your news from at least two sources with conflicting editorial biases. Distill reality from the mash as best you can. News sites on the web make this much easier and faster than it used to be. And you said decades ago we had a very limited amount of news outlets, so we had to believe what we read. Now the choice is massive. So absolutely, I totally agree with you on this, Mahender. Is you must go out and try and corroborate everything that you read. Don't believe everything you read or hear or see. Is try and find other sources and try and come to your own conclusions with as you say, this mash of news, James.
Absolutely. We've covered the disinformation, the misinformation, and the outright, propaganda of all different nations, including India, but all others as well. So again, watch those old shows or the previous shows in our archives, because it really highlights the necessity to get your source of information from reliable sources, not just one. And we've covered, the echo chambers and the left, the rights, and so on and so forth. So again, check out some of our previous episodes to really highlight that if you have questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for that comment, Mahender. And President, this is a really nice comment. Thank you for this. Our dedication to honest, fearless and ethical journalism is truly commendable. And as you say, it's so hard these days with so much misinformation to actually get the truth out. Well, we do our best, James, don't we?
Absolutely, and we may on occasion get it wrong, but that's where we appreciate and respect all of our viewers who reach out and say, hey, you got that one wrong. So then we go back and we fix it. So
exactly.
Again, we're not perfect, but we are working hard to try and do it. And we appreciate the comments that acknowledge that we are getting through.
Indeed. And as always, a huge thank you to our audience for all the efforts that you put into the show. And the final sign-off goes to Jagtar Singh Johal with an absolutely heartfelt Khalistan Zindabad, as indeed we always happy to endorse that very statement. But yes, that is it for another day. Thanks so much to our audience. Thank you for all the comments. As I say, there's been some great comments, particularly last week. So thank you for all the effort that many of you put into those very long, well thought out comments. Are very much appreciated. Do keep them coming. Do let us know anything that you'd like us to talk about. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satledgetv.com if there's anything you want to bring to James or my attention directly. But that's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We'll see you next time.